everyone, to Session 1 of Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition, Memento Mori, run by myself, Darewolf, and 4 super cool dudes that I have the pleasure of calling my friends. And now I have the pleasure of driving them insane, which is going to be amazing, which is I guess, the purpose of Call of Cthulhu, but I digress. As a tradition, we're going to go around the table. We're going to have everyone introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about who they're playing. Sorry, I got off that 13-hour stream yesterday. I'm still a little tired. But we are going to dive right in. And today we're going to go Sanbei, Professor X, Matthew Symbol. Just tell us who you are and what character you'll be playing for our Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition adventure. Very beautiful. Absolutely delightful. And I, of course, am Darewolf, the Keeper. I should change the overlay to say Keeper instead of GM, but we'll leave it. It is a Game Master. So the year is 1923. Turn of the century. Turn of the century, 1923. It is October 30th, one day before Halloween. All of you are friends, acquaintances, perhaps former or present colleagues of a man known as Rupert Merriweather. You've recently been contacted by Rupert Merriweather. He's aging, and according to the letter, Merriweather is extremely unwell and seems he is not long for this world. He has asked each and every one of you to meet him at St. Mary's Teaching Hospital in Arkham at 1 o'clock on this upcoming Sunday. The day that you get this letter is Thursday of the week prior, giving you time to travel to Arkham. You haven't seen the man for quite some time, so this urgent summons appears to be quite important. Each of you, there is a phrase that he uses. Perhaps it is a call to the time that you served in the military. Perhaps it's a call to a specific item that he asked you to retrieve. Perhaps it's a slight reminiscence of a big game hunt you went on. Or perhaps it is a reminder that he is the reason you are attending this prestigious school to get an education beyond your by birthright means. But each of you has received this letter and has begun to make your way to Arkham, arriving in various means, perhaps of your own truck, perhaps you've arrived by bus, perhaps you have a chauffeur who is older than you and is driving you there. But I'd like to open our scene with David. David, the college itself, the College of Arkham, is a little bit outside of town, the campus and the grounds. So you've had to wait at the bus stop for several hours. The bus has arrived. You purchased a ticket, got on that bus. It's roughly a 2-hour journey by bus from the university to downtown, where the St. Mary's Teaching Hospital is located. You're stepping off the bus into a somewhat nice day. It is late October. The weather has started to turn on the East Coast. The leaves are falling, and it's actually quite colorful here in Arkham. You see, all different reds and greens and blues and purples and just strange colored trees, I guess. It's already Cthulhian horror. But as you step off the bus, I'd like you to just take a brief moment, describe David to us as he steps onto a somewhat busy Arkham City street at about 12:30 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. So as you step off and the people of the street, each of them, what you notice first, David, is that each of them seems to give you just that slide glance that you had mentioned, and then quickly look away, and they seem very distracted, very just there's something on each of their minds, is what you notice, be it their work, uh, be it their day jobs, whatever it may be, but you're just allowing all of them to move around. Thank you so much for the sub. I very much appreciate it, Blau. But with that being said, you begin to make your way down the sidewalk. Again, not really running into anybody. And as you look down, so you take a right out of this bus, you look to the right, and you can see St. Mary's Teaching Hospital. You've actually been to the hospital once or twice to shadow some of the doctors. It is by far, at least with regards to modern science, the finest and most prestigious teaching hospital in all of America at this point. It has some of the most modern medicine available to a man at the time. And this is where you are to meet Meriwether. But as you step out and you begin to make your way into the street, I'd like you to roll me a intelligence check. If you would, just a standard, it's not hard or extreme or anything, just a regular intelligence check in this moment. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. You remember, as you need to cross the street, to look both ways before doing so. Though you did grow up on a farm, and the city is somewhat foreign to you still, as you've only been at college for a year or two, I believe you had mentioned, you stop. You look both ways before you cross the street, and thank God that you do, as barreling down the road, driving far too fast, is a very, very nice looking luxury car with a giant R on the front as its little hood ornament. And as it zooms past, you manage to stop yourself from stepping forward. But as you glance through the window, you see, and Reginald, Symbol, I'd like you to describe Reginald. His driver is driving far too fast, but you have just blown past this bus stop. You nearly ran over a large, oddly shapen young man, and you've almost arrived at the teaching hospital. So let's pick up that scene right there inside the car. Just driving way too fast. No.
Gray hair, very, very, very receding, and his big, puffy mustache and mutton chops, very gray, and seems to be reading a letter.
Beautiful. And as you are reading this letter, you are holding on to it, and I'm going to have you actually make a dexterity check in this moment as your driver slams on the brakes, sending the car into a screeching halt as he pulls right up next to a large red bricked wall. And there is a huge plaque on the side of this wall that says St. Mary's Teaching Hospital. And with the 12, you actually are very familiar with how your driver, Bernard, operates. He drives far too fast and stops even faster as well. And you brace yourself, feeling that kind of pulse of the brakes. You brace yourself and manage not to spill forward and knock your head on the back of his seat.
Sir, we have arrived at the teaching hospital per your request.
Very good, Bernard. Please make sure the luggage is properly brought up to my room. I will be in for tea.
Your room, sir? Are you planning to stay at the teaching hospital?
Was I not invited to stay at the teaching hospital?
No, sir. Simply to visit your friend.
Hmm. Then where do I sleep?
A
Bernard,
puzzle, sir.
these things you're supposed to take care of them.
Yes, I'm sorry.
We've
I'm sorry.
discussed this in the
And
past.
as we hear this argument happening, as Reginald steps out of the vehicle, we hear this argument happening between him and his driver. We pivot over to the backside. We kind of pan around the outside to where the deliveries are made. And we see well, I'd like you to take a moment, Anton, describe your vehicle, and then describe the man, your character, as he steps out of the vehicle, finding a parking spot large enough for his van or truck, as it were.
The 1920s style delivery truck. So like a pickup on steroids, covered walls, enough where you can hide certain things if you need to. Very nondescript, as is Anton. Overalls, worker overalls, the little page boy cap. Gets out of the car, looks around, sees somebody, kind of points, is it okay to park here? And
Thumbs up.
kind of waves him on and starts to walk on in.
Perfect. So as he starts to walk on in, he looks over at the gate attendant. And the guy is a young boy, looks to maybe be 13, 14, and he's just sitting on a little booth right there with the back gate that allows you into this loading and unloading area for the hospital. And he just kind of did this and then goes back to reading his, whatever little paper or book that he's reading at the time. And as you step out, you start to make your way towards the back entrance. You hear a man shout to you, "Hey! You can't park there! What the hell's wrong with you, man?
What is wrong with parking truck here?
We got a big delivery coming in for the teaching hospital. You can't park there."
Well, what can I park delivery truck?
"I don't
It's not
know.
a delivery area.
What are you delivering?" And you start to get into this argument back and forth, and he starts to get a little huffy, and you start to get a little huffy back to him. It's back and forth and back and forth. The man looks to be dressed kind of like he looks like maybe a medical student, but as you look a little closer, he looks more like an orderly. But he's carrying himself like he's got a little bit of an arrogant kind of attitude in this moment. So he starts to move towards you, and if you imagine the back area, it's a U-shaped kind of back area, and a lot of hospitals have this large U shape. They've got the wings, the front area where they've got the entrance. You're in this back area. There's a ramp that goes down into a big garage door, and then there's this little like kind of porch-like area that people can walk out. So the truck's back up. It's high enough to where the back of the truck you don't have to lift, or etc. It can come right back out. But he's standing there and he starts to walk around and come down those steps, and he's walking towards you, and he's kind of talking with his hands like, "Hey, I'm not the one that makes the rules here, but you can't park there. You're blocking traffic as they're coming in right now. You can't do this." And he's going back and forth and back and forth. I'd like you to make a quick check here, and it could simply be a appearance check. You could make a power check if you have any sort of skills with regards to fast talking or any kind of persuasion or anything like that. You could also use that skill as well.
I do have persuasion.
All right, you may make a persuasion check. 24. Damn, you guys are doing way too well. Glad we're getting all these good rolls out of the way. So you're going to succeed, Anton, in talking this man down, but I'd like you to flavor it. How does Anton talk him down? He's not outwardly aggressive, but it seems like he's trying to be the big fish in this little pond.
So, my friend, I think you don't understand who I represent. Do you know of big crime family name insert here in Boston?
You know of crime family. He's just to the last step. His hand grips onto the railing and he freezes. He looks at you and he kind of like squints his eyes as though he's trying to maybe make out your features a little bit better. He looks left, he looks right, he looks left, to the truck, back to you, to the truck, back to you. Oh, you know what I just remembered? That delivery's not due for like 4 or 5 hours. So I mean, you need longer than 4 or 5 hours? I mean, if
No, it's short time.
It's totally
But
fine.
If you can make sure nothing happens to the truck is good.
Oh,
'Cause-
yeah.
And you don't remember me, but I will make
Who?
sure
I don't.
remember
who am
you.
I even talking to? I don't know
Exactly.
anything. Yeah. Hey, Gene, I'm going on break for the next 5 hours. And he's gonna step down, and he walks over, and he just starts kind of like loitering around your truck, and gives you like a really awkward big grin.
And I look over to the kid. I say, I know you're the one who's really in charge. And I flip him a quarter. Says, keep eye on truck for me, okay?
All right. You said you're flipping him a quarter?
I think that's big money back in the 20s.
Big money. He rolled a 4, so he, without looking, catches it out of the air and says, "Thank you, sir." And that's where we're at. So we watch as Anton walks in. Lastly, but certainly not leastly, we see... Well, describe your vehicle to us. You are just entering the outskirts of town. Luckily, the teaching hospital itself is near to the north side of the town of Arkham, so it's not too far in off of the main road, as it were. But take a moment. What do you look like? Tell us who you are.
So coming in from Boston, you see a 2-door coupe in forest green, a rather recent, as in probably manufactured the year before, an Oldsmobile 6, and it sort of cruises in and parks on the street, and then out steps this woman. She is about 5'3", probably 115 pounds. Has got kind of a slender frame, but athletic. She's got sort of this fawn-colored kind of complexion, close-cropped black hair, and she has this kind of feline sort of energy and motion to her, and is wearing, somewhat unusually for the times, a man's suit, right? Sort of standard issue, like shirt and vest and suit pants and all that. She gets out, she's smoking a cigarette, and she takes a look at the hospital and begins to move forward towards it.
Excellent. As you begin to make your way towards the hospital, you get to the entrance where you see a... Reginald, describe again, what exactly are you wearing in this moment, Reginald?
Reginald is wearing his big game hunter typical outfit, the beige, the sock pants tucked into the socks, poofy and everything.
Mm-hmm.
He's got his hat on now. He's got his cane out, and he's toking on his pipe, and just like looking at the hospital and contemplating while Bernard in the back is taking out not a giant suitcase, but a very long
Yes, sir,
suitcase.
of course, sir. I'll be happy to take your bags up to the hospital, sir. And just yelling. But you hear him, Amara, you hear this man, Reginald, mention the name Merriweather. Now, you may simply pass by, you might choose to interact, but I leave the scene to you.
Hurry up, Bernard. We need to go see I need to go see Merriweather.
I think Amara will approach clearly the guy in charge here, giving orders, right? We'll approach this very British man, and take a drag of her cigarette and say, "Did I hear you say Rupert Merriweather?"
Ah, hello. Oh, hello, old boy. Yes, I'm here to see my old friend, Merriweather. It's been quite some time, yes. Do you perhaps know him?
Yeah, indeed I do. I believe we are here for the same purpose. And your name, sir?
Rupert Becker III.
Is that because the previous two were unfortunate? Or?
What are these questions? They were my father and his father.
A proud lineage, I see.
But of course.
Sir, where would you like these bags taken, sir?
I said, Bernard, only the long case. Bring it up to the Sir Meriwether's room.
Yes,
I have to
sir.
repeat myself every time.
Sorry,
No,
sir.
no, please allow me, Bernard, if you would. And she will gesture to like take the long
Oh,
case.
no, madam. This will not do.
Oh, yes, I would love some help. My old bones. And so there's a moment where he's protesting and he's trying to
I'm
pass it to you.
protesting.
She's trying to take it. And we watch as this young man who has looked both ways cross the street. And you hear this, you see this commotion before you, David. And something about the woman with this, it's almost comical. You see this man dressed in big game hunter, tanned, completely out of, just
Oh no,
doesn't look
he is
normal at all.
completely white. Like he is pasty white. He has not seen the sun in like
Forever.
10
Hilarious.
years.
But you also see this woman, and there is something about this woman that reminds you of a conversation you had with Merriweather just a number of years ago. You're probably the one that's seen him most recently, but you had a conversation with him. It was around the time that he was offering to pay for your education, and he wanted to make sure you had the same opportunities, if not more, that he did. Since he only had the one son, and that son was, well, he didn't specifically say, but he wasn't proud of him, was the impression that you got. But he mentioned a woman, a dark-skinned woman who, and he said it with this like almost mischievous smile, wore the clothing of men, and she did it better than most men do. That is what he had said. And there's something about this woman that reminds you of that conversation. And perhaps you may even hear them mention at one point something about Merriweather, but I'd like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the scene as well, or maybe David simply just walks by.
Actually, as he sees that debate going on and overhears that conversation about this elderly man hefting heavy bags, and then a woman, despite the fact that she is clearly quite capable and has Mr. Merriweather's esteem, he's going to step forward, plucking the cap off the top of his head, and then crush it in his hand as if he's anxious. Resolve overtakes his features. He steps forward and gestures out with a little bit of tentativeness. I'm sorry, you were talking about Mr. Merriweather? Ma'am? Sir?
Oh.
By Jove, my boy. What do you eat to be this big?
They are so terribly loud.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll try to speak more softly.
No, not you, my cher. That's anyway. Yes, we were indeed speaking of Mr. Merriweather.
He called you as well. Then. And he shifts the cap awkwardly to his other hand and extends one meaty palm. David Knox, another associate of Mr. Merriweather.
We are in good company, no? Amara Al-Haradi.
Rupert Baker the Third.
And his hand just sort of sitting out there in the air and drops awkwardly. Yes, sir, and he points over to your driver. Please allow me.
Oh, thank you. I have not as nimble as and he just mumbles something about not being nimble or as capable as he used to be. But we watch as this trio of interesting characters. We see David and perhaps Amara carrying this long chest with them for some reason through the front gate. The grounds of the teaching hospital appear to be very well kept, but you notice that most of the trees in this hospital have already lost their leaves. Though fall has really just started to begin, the hospital has this sort of dead-like quality to it, despite being a apparent place of health and healing and what have you. But as you walk through, you notice the grass is already browned. The trees themselves are all devoid of leaves, not a single one. The only ones you see are those kind of brown and very mushy ones on the ground. The sidewalk itself has been freshly cleared, but as you walk up, there are these large, wooden doors that have been painted a dark red. And across the top, you see the Mary St. Mary's Teaching Hospital, as it were. But as you walk in, you enter into the main area, and the hospital itself seems a little quiet. Normally, you'd go into a hospital, you would see a number of patients standing around, folks waiting to be for their intakes, perhaps there'd be those visiting family. But other than a large wooden front desk with what appears to be either a secretary or nurse sitting behind it, you see only one other person in a very old style wooden
Wheelchair.
wheelchair. That's the one. You can tell I'm tired. Wooden wheelchair, just ever so slowly making his way from the right side of the counter. Looks like he's trying to make his way to the left side. And you just hear this. Just that's all you see. Other than that, you don't hear the standard murmur of a hospital or anything like that. It's, again, very, very quiet. What would you guys like to do?
Looking at the person in the wheelchair. And turn over to Bernard.
Yes,
Bernard, I believe this chap needs some help. This is only the proper thing to do.
we all need help, sir. And he's going to make his way over to the man. He has a quiet conversation between the two of them. The man seems grateful, and you watch as Bernard starts to push him from the left to the right. The nurse, or secretary, whatever she may be, looks up for just a brief moment, looks over, kind of leaning up, leans back, shakes her head, and then goes back to either writing or reading whatever she is behind the desk.
Well, I suppose I should be ambassador then. And Amara will walk forward, stride up to the desk and take a drag of the cigarette right in front of this secretary of a hospital.
It's the 20s.
And
It's fine.
Yeah, well, and say, yes, we this
Intake or
party-
visiting?
visiting.
Name of the patient?
Rupert Merriweather.
1 second. And you see as she spins around and there's a little table behind her right up against the wall. There's a couple of windows behind that seem to go into like a back little, maybe like central area, quad area. There's some, again, dead trees. The grass is all browned and what have ye. And she starts flipping through a book, puts her finger hard down on the page, slides it down. You said Rupert Merriweather?
That's right.
4th floor, room 433. Take the stairs to the left. She spins around, leans forward, and you see that she is reading what appears to be some sort of, maybe you don't quite catch the name, but you just read a line. It says, and the man pressed himself deeply and passionately against, and that's what you see. She's reading some sort of, perhaps, I don't know, smut novel is what it looks like, is what she's reading.
Come on now, Bernard. Enough lollygagging.
Bernard's gone. He's pushed that man off somewhere way down the hall. So you
Damn
have no
it,
idea where it
Bernard.
is.
Can never trust you.
That's true. You can't. He's a terrible person.
A little game, Miss. If you would, as you are working through your novel, try to underline every time they use the word turgid. It's very fun.
She looks at first she looks a little offended. Then she seems to realize that you're not a man, but a woman. And then she gives you this very knowing smile. Just a little the corner of her cheek, like the corner of her lips there. She just goes, "Will do."
Good day. And she'll gesture at the others. And
I believe we know where our poor friend is.
So we watch as the three of you make your way to one of the stairwells, going up to the second, the third, then the fourth floor. You find that you are in the low 400s, and finally getting up to the fourth floor, you see that there are it seems to be more doctors and nurses than should be on this floor, and they are all congregated all the way down the hallway in front of this room that appears to be closer to that 433, that room 433 that you're looking for. And there is a murmur, there is a commotion. You overhear something about, "I've never seen anything quite like this. Doctor, it seems to be Well, it can't be that because he doesn't have the lesions. I understand, but what is it? Everything we have tried has not succeeded. I know, but if we are to lose this man, we also lose the funding. And there's this conversation going on and on, nurses coming in and out. And in the middle of this little kind of crowd of people outside of this room, you see a younger looking man. Looks to be maybe in his late mid-20s, but he looks to be almost the spitting image of your friend Rupert Merriweather. And you do know that Rupert Merriweather has a son. You see that a couple of the doctors are talking with him, and the son just has this blank, almost morose kind of look on his face. It's almost expressionless, actually. He just looks very numb to the situation. The doctors are asking, and he's just but he seems very disengaged in these conversations that are happening all around him. But again, I leave the scene to all of you.
Come on now. Let's not lollygag.
Can I possibly pick up on some more of the conversation? I want to sort of casually eavesdrop.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. You can go ahead and make a... Well, you could do intelligence if you have any sort of investigation, street like smooth talking, anything like that. Anything you'd like to roll to attempt this
I was just
check.
thinking about using listen.
I mean, you can just listen. That's fine.
Well, I basically didn't want to interact with them. I just wanted to.
I thought you wanted to ask questions. Forgive me. All right,
No,
yeah.
no.
So you could just use listen. Absolutely.
Here we go.
Not bad. Not
All right.
bad. Not bad at all. So you listen in on the conversation. And is there anything specific you're trying to listen for, Amara? Or are you simply just trying to maybe get a better idea of what's going on?
I'm trying to ascertain two things. I want to really nail down exactly who it is they're talking about who's in this medical distress. And I also want some more details about what exactly is wrong with this person.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So as you are listening in on the conversation, you actually pick up on two doctors that are just a little bit back, so a little bit closer to your direction. Maybe they've stepped about 10 feet away from the rest. And both of them are discussing the patient, Mr. Merriweather. Mr. Merriweather is who they are talking about. And they mention things along the lines of, I could swear it was scarlet fever, except for the black lesions weeping and the fluid we can't identify. I've never seen anything quite that color before come out of a human being. Well, we are always discovering new diseases. I mean, think about all of the research happening in Africa. We've discovered diseases we never thought possible. And then they go on and on and on. They describe several... You've witnessed war. You've witnessed different diseases. You've lived in Africa. You're from Morocco. You've seen some of these horrific things that, modern medicine has no cure for. They describe several different features of this particular disease affecting him that remind you of a dozen or more different things. Blood from places there shouldn't be blood, strange lesions that are weeping, green viscous fluid, and this temperament. They mention his temperament. The man seems to go from sane to insane in the blink of an eye. One moment he is himself speaking. He seems to not even notice all of the afflictions affecting him. And then the next he is just screaming, uncontrollably screaming words that don't make sense. It's putting together phrases that have no meaning. And something about this language that they've never heard before.
I think understanding that, I would turn to what I imagine that David is still relatively close by.
Actually, if I could, the moment that David had heard one of the nurses or one of the doctors saying something along the lines of, if we lose him, we lose our funding, this dark expression would have overtaken his rather sort of phlegmatic face, and he would actually turn on them and walk towards them, leaving the group.
Stepping forward, you begin to make your way towards this circle of doctors, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Stepping out of a small side doorway, which you realize right as it almost hits you in the face is a bathroom, is none other than our Russian friend, Anton. Anton, you've arrived a few minutes, maybe a minute or two prior to the rest. You've been holding it for quite a long time as you've driven quite a long distance, so you slipped into the bathroom prior to making your way over to Merryweather's.
I had to make additional delivery.
He did indeed. Before stepping over towards Merryweather's hospital room, as it were. But you almost nail this oddly shapen young man as you step out. But I give you two a moment to apologize to one another.
You're muted, as is tradition.
Wife was giving me something to drink, and okay, so I bump into David. Shows the chat. What the hell? What the?
He's
Okay.
sorry.
Sorry.
It's fine. No, it's my fault. And you can see that he's distracted, his attention divided between you and a glare that he directs over your shoulder at those doctors. And he deflates slightly. No, sorry, sir. That's. Are you all right? That's my fault.
No, I am fine. And if it was problem inside hospital, so it's easy fix.
I suppose that is true, sir. Best cure is to not get hurt in the first place.
Is what I think. But okay, I'm sorry. I don't mean to delay you. I know you have important business.
Right. Yes.
But
he sort of stands there awkwardly.
And I kind of walk on by, just kind of looking over him, shaking my head, and like.
And you both notice, as you both maybe one after another, just a slight delay, start to move towards the same direction. You are almost walking side by side. Up ahead, you see this. You see Amara standing there, a little bit closer to these other two doctors. Not making it obvious. Maybe just maybe you were waiting for the restroom or what have you. Behind you, you hear Reginald complaining about Bernard, as it were, because where is that blasted man? He's completely useless. Can't trust. Can't possible to find good help today.
I mean, I just lost my porter. He just dropped the case.
That is true. That is true. But as you all begin to make your way towards David, you are catching up quickly to Anton, who left slightly before you. You hear this familiar voice, but it is raspy. It seems older than you remember him. He is a man of 60, but has always been very youthful. He has traveled the world. He has been in wars. He has gone big game hunting. He has smuggled. He has been a philanthropist. He has done all sorts of things, but you hear this almost raspy voice. What time is it? What? They're supposed to be here. Where are they? Where are they? Frank, my boy, where are they? Are they here? You see the young man, this spitting image of Rupert Merryweather. You see him turn towards the doorway into room 433. He says, Father, there's a group of people here. I'm not sure they're who you're expecting, but send them in. The doctors, all of them, out! I said fucking out! Out of all of you! Get out of the room! And you see this kind of almost horde of nurses and doctors, almost a dozen of them, above and beyond the dozen or so that were in the hallway, begin to shuffle out. You see his son kind of is like passing him along, almost looks like a shepherd herding these group of doctors, and they all kind of spill out into the hallway and start to make their way quickly. You continue to hear these conversations. There's something not quite right about this. Never seen anything. Is it contagious? It doesn't seem to be. No one else has picked it up. And what of that box? He refuses to let anyone touch. What of that box? It's the last thing you hear. But as these group of people all disappears, almost parting before you like the Red Sea, you see this young man, the spitting image of him. He looks at all of you, and this almost blank, emotionless expression turns a little suspicious. I understand my father contacted you and asked you to meet him here.
Yes, that is correct.
Did he
No.
specify why he was inviting you here?
Yeah, no.
Only that
Not
it
to
was
me.
important.
Only that it was of vital importance.
Yeah.
That's what I just said.
His nose kind of twitches a little bit, and his whole face just kind of jerks to the side. The inheritance is mine. I don't care what he says and what he promises you. The inheritance is mine.
Very well. I, for one, have no interest in that.
A look of disgust crosses over David's face, and he narrows his eyes, taking a step forward towards the son, emphasizing probably the distinction between their relative sizes. He says, "You're as disgusting as those doctors. Your father's dying, and all you care about is your funding, your money. Pathetic."
You think you can talk to me like that? You, the beggar that my father lifted up out of the gutter? How dare you? And he goes to step forward, raising a hand as if he is about to strike David. Although David is taller than him and bigger, he is like reaching up. Go ahead, Anton.
I step in between, and I lift up my shirt to show the butt of a 1911 automatic
That's
pistol.
so aggressive. And I kind of love
Yeah.
it. And the boy, the man, you could call him, he's acting like a boy, he stops. His hand had just started to raise. It wasn't up, but it was starting to raise. You've seen this happen before, Anton. You've been in street brawls. Even Amara would have noticed it. Reginald, you are still wondering where Bernard is.
No, the cane it was coming very much up to...
Oh, yes, I love it, the cane. We're all going to defend this boy we just met. I love it. But as he goes to, he very quickly retracts. Just like my father to deal with the denizen of the world.
Well, wouldn't the government actually be taking the first part of any inheritance? With the death tax and all.
I don't have time for this. To hell with all of you.
What is wrong with your father?
He turns and says, as he turns away from you, looks as though he's about to move away. He stops, looks over. God only knows. God only knows. And then he just storms off, and you hear him call, Dr. Burchard! Dr. Burchard! I need to ask you another question. And he meets up with his doctor, and they continue to walk down the hallway.
I see now why Meriwether never wanted his son to interact with us.
This is perhaps not the ideal way of judging him. After all, his father is dying.
His father's dying, and what he cares about is his inheritance. That's what he focuses on.
There is more. That is deeper sickness than his father have.
It is easier to judge from here, but having come from a place of no great fortune, I can understand that desperation.
Yeah.
Well, only reason that I have a life to speak of is because of Mr. Merriweather. He's a good man. He's done right by me. And if his son can't see that, then that's his problem.
David! David, is that you? Do I hear you out there?
Well, boy, enter.
Reginald! Are you here? All of you is... Amara! Anton!
We're
Please!
here, old boy.
Yeah,
We're
please.
here.
Yes.
No, let's go. Let's go in.
Move into the room.
As you step into the room, the first thing that you notice is the smell. The room has this foul, odorous aroma. Every hospital has that hospital smell. Smells of chemicals and bodily fluids, and no matter how much they clean it, it always has that smell. It's like bleach mixed with that, right? But this room smells like a battlefield. The battlefield post a horrific war. It smells like the trenches of World War One. The bodies just stacked one on top of another. It's not quite as pungent as hundreds, if not thousands, of bodies decaying in the sun. but it has that aroma to it, has that taste in the air. And the air in his hospital room feels heavy. As you approach his bed, there's a small curtain that's been pulled slightly to kind of obscure it. But as you pull it back, you see your old friend, Rupert Merriweather. It might be 2 or 3 years, maybe it's 4 or 5, maybe it's been more than a decade since you've seen him, but he looks to have aged 30, 40, maybe even 50 years. His skin is patchy, pale, and gaunt. His eyes look sunken. His hair has completely turned white and appears to be falling out in a multitude of patches. On the small little stand next to him, you see that there is a little black box that has a tiny little latch on it that looks to fit just a small little key that you'd wear around your neck. Around his neck, you see this silver chain with, well, as fate would have it, a small little key. His eyes struggle to open. They were closed as you stepped in. They struggle to open, and you see that the whites of his eyes have this kind of pale pastiness. And just under his right eye, you see this cut. It almost looks like a claw mark. And it's got a bandage over it, but you can see that the bandage has started to fall, and there's just this little tiny bit of green, almost like bog green kind of liquid just seeping out. He struggles looking from one to the other, to the final two. Thank God, you've come. I have been a fool. I have been a fool. He starts to cough, and he reaches with a very weak, almost skeletal-like hand towards the small little stand next to him. You see that he is reaching for what appears to be a tiny little cup with some water in it. His hand is trembling, and you see that he's about to knock it over.
David will shoot
Yeah.
forward.
Several of you jump forward, running into each other and collapsing over one another. Just kidding. But as you all move forward, I would say David, you seem like you were the most, I suppose, invested. You reach the cup, taking it, bringing it up to his mouth, and pouring it into his very chapped and dry-looking lips. As he opens his mouth, you see that his teeth, he's missing the left side front incisor and a whole row on the bottom, and his gums look to be blackened and almost in a very, very advanced stage of decay. He looks up at you, and there's this expression that reminds you of the one time your father said he was proud of you. And every time Mr. Merriweather would see you, he always has this expression. I've told you this once. I'll tell you it again, David. I wish you were my son. You deserve more than your lot in life. No matter what happens to me, I will make sure you're taken care of, but I need. He starts this uncontrollable coughing, and as he coughs, you see that there is a bit of blood that comes up and strikes the white sheets. Now, when I say white sheets, there's a lot of different colored stains on these sheets, but the little part, you see this, not a gout, but just a small drops of blood, almost reminiscent of like tuberculosis or something like that. He looks up at all of you. His eyes are again struggling. He's gripping onto your forearm, David, the same one that was holding that cup of water. Your hand is trembling as he's gripping on with the strength that he has your forearm gripped in. It's almost enough to hurt, but not quite there. And that strength does not match this gaunt, almost skeletal-like hand. The skin pulled tight. It's pasty. You see additional lesions. But he begins to tell you a story. The story comes through coughs, these fits, trembling. His voice will rise from time to time. He'll start to giggle and laugh and become manic, and then he'll drop down to almost a whisper. But he tells you this story. He says, in my youth, I and some fellow students became involved and what we believe to be an innocent exploration of the occult, led by a slightly older fellow, a man named Marion Allen. The 6 of us purchased an old farmhouse a few miles west of Arkham, near the village of Ross's Corners. It's the same village that your family's from, David. It's maybe around the time that they actually met you at one point in the distant past. Maybe he was traveling near that area. There we could conduct seances and other psychical research in privacy. Alas, our work had unforeseen results. Our last experiment summoned an evil force into this world. Instead of attempting to expel the thing, we were afraid and abandoned the old house, confident that the magic that brought the evil into this world would also keep it confined in the vacant house or send it back after a short time. However, I have since discovered that the spell that binds the entity to the house lasts only as long as the casters live. I am the last of the group, and I fear upon my death the thing will go free and wreak havoc upon the folks thereabout. I am too old, too ill, and too much of a coward to go back to that house and try to banish the entity myself. I am guilty of many things, but my deepest sin was unleashing that horror that fateful night. I am convinced the entity will escape its confinements on my death. Take the box, he gestures. He's very weak. He finally lets go of your forearm, David. Take this box. All the aid I can offer you lies within. You must find the courage to send that thing back to where it came from. You must see this done. Do this for me. Please. Please. Take the box. The lesion on his face begins to weep, almost as though it is crying. From his left eye, you see this trickle of blood. He starts to convulse. Who grabs the box?
I would, since I'm...
Reginald, you see David looking at him. You move forward. You grab the box. As soon as your hand touches the box, and you just feel that slight amount of weight as you lift something, you can feel your hand kind of, fight the resistance. Merryweather shoots up, sitting straight up in bed. He begins to scream. It is like a banshee's wail. As he does so, a literal gout of blood shoots forth from his mouth, splattering the walls, the windows, possibly even hitting some of you. As this gout of blood shoots out, you hear this scream from the nurse that was standing inside the doorway to the hospital room. She screams, "Oh, God!" A moment later, there is a rush of all of those doctors and medical professionals. You hear the heavy footfalls. Before you can even realize what is going on, I'm going to need every one of you to make one of my favorite checks of this game. Make a sanity check, please. Make a sanity check. Hello? Uh-oh.
Okay.
Wow. Well, 3 of you that failed all lose 1 point of sanity. The scene that you see before you, this man is expunging more blood than the human body should contain. It is horrific. The scream of the nurse, the scream of Merryweather. As soon as the blood gout stops, you watch as the man falls back into the bed, begins conversing. Before you can do anything, before you can interact, before you can check to see if your old friend is all right, you are forcibly pulled out of the room by several orderlies and several doctors. You are shoved down the hallway, out of the way. You hear them start to scream, "What the hell was that? Dear gods, we're losing him." And I leave the 4 of you standing, slightly maybe splattered with a little bit of blood, with this black box in Reginald's hand. What would you like to do?
You're muted, Sunday. As is tradition.
Dog was making noise in the background. All right. Anton's looking at the blood on his shirt, the blood on the friends, and it's just still kind of mumbling in Russian. It's what is occult? This is what I don't know.
Amara will raise the hand with her cigarette back up, but you'll notice that it is trembling ever so slightly. She takes another drag. A cult is there is a darkness in men's souls, and it often finds that like attracts like, and that these dark souls congregate, and that they are in a great confluence with each other. They seek to do their dark work. That is a cult.
David, who had up until that point been leaning his bulk against the wall, looks up at her and shakes his head. No, that's a really pretty way of putting it, but it's just nonsense. Stories told by old ladies out in the woods, and people talking to the devil. It's just they're folk stories.
My boy.
I grew up with them.
Baba Yaga, witches.
Hunting in Africa, I have seen things I cannot explain.
There was a witch hiding in every house and every grove out near my farm, and I never saw a single one of them. It's just legends.
Regardless of how each of us feel about this claim of poor Mary's, we owe it to him at least to see his wishes through. What could it hurt to go to this place and, well, see things for ourselves?
Does the cult do what happened to him? The blood was not normal.
That
I
would
have
be
seen blood. I have seen that was not.
that would be a new trick.
It was just some new disease. We'll figure it out. I mean, there's an explanation for that. There's a lot of blood, but I don't know. Amara, though, is right. He was a good man. Is a good. Either way, we will do it for him. He's real to him.
I place my cane on the windowsill, take the box, put it also on the windowsill, looking at it.
Mhm.
Take out a flask.
Mhm.
Open it. Take a small swig.
Mhm.
Close it up. Put it back in.
Reginald, as you close it up and start to put it back into your coat pocket, the box seems to vibrate. You hear this just very, very subtle. You look up, and the box seems to have ever so slightly. You set it pretty evenly on the ledge. It seems to be hanging ever so slightly, and it's just looks like it's about to fall.
I pick it back up.
The latch, this latch that there was a key for, the latch appears to have come undone of its own accord.
Did one of you take the key and open this?
You've had the key the whole time.
Looking at your right hand, Reginald, you notice that there is a key in the same hand that was just holding onto the flask. It's the same key that you saw around Meriwether's neck.
Did you not open it?
I have no memory of this.
No, I did not see.
I try to click the latch closed again.
The latch closes.
I put the box down. And I check my hand. Is the key still there?
Key is still in your hand.
I think perhaps this situation is how do they say doing our heads in. I think perhaps we should step outside, discuss
And
this in the air, fresh air.
I mean, we have just seen something incredibly horrible. That's stands to reason we'd be affected. You're quite right, madam.
David, you are
Yes.
sorry.
Please, miss, not madame.
I'm sorry, miss. And he sort of gives you a little bit of an awkward stare as he looks you up and down, almost as if realizing for the first time just how you're dressed.
See anything you like?
I'm sorry, miss. I didn't mean anything by that. It's just I don't see many women of your breeding.
What is that supposed to mean?
Many things. You're obviously a well refined woman, and Mr. Merriweather often spoke well of you and your breeding. Yes, that was the term he used. So I'm just right.
As they're continuing to talk this situation with Mary, just making sure to twist that awkwardness as much as she can. I pick back up the box with one hand, my cane with the other, and just start walking towards the exit the way we
Perfect.
came.
I'll take a looking at David and Amara's conversation. I'll take out my own flask and take a hit and offer it to Amara and David. Settle your nerves.
Amara, without even she's still looking at David, but will gesture out, grab it, take a swig, and
His
return.
vodka.
David is just sort of worrying his hands together awkwardly, and so he unclenches them and reaches out, takes the flask, and takes a swig as well.
Put that on your chest. Not you, miss.
As I arrive at the stairs, I clack my cane on the ground, turn around. Well,
Bernard
Are
is
we
standing
going?
right there. Going
Chop,
where,
chop.
sir?
Bernard, let's get the vehicle ready.
Yes, sir. So, David, as you are having this awkward conversation with Amara, Reginald has made his way down the stairs. You heard him call to the rest of you, well, are we going? It occurs to you, David, that there is a local kind of like coffee shop, little diner that is very close to the teaching hospital that a lot of the staff, students, and whatnot will frequent. And if you needed a place to take your newfound group and sit down and maybe grab a cup of joe or just sit down and think about what's just transpired, that might be a good location to go to. And it's right across the street.
Especially when you're specked with blood.
So David, in this little, this is a terrible word, but I'm going to use it. This ejaculation, sort of forcefully and quite quickly, as if he's just desperately trying to get out of this conversation. You're right. We should be going. Mr. Barkley wants us to follow him. I know a cafe that we can visit, madam, miss, if you want.
Are the servers there of good breeding, you would say?
They're fine. Yes.
Well, by all means.
After you, man. Miss. And he just sort of smiles awkwardly.
How far away is this coffee house?
Just about 3-4 blocks from the hospital.
Okay, I might have to move my truck.
Cut to a scene of that man still very uncomfortably standing in front of it.
See, I told you, not too long.
Beautiful. So we will montage our way as we watch as the four of you make your way down the stairs. You get out. The young woman appears to have a pencil in her hand now, and it seems to be underlining a couple of words on the page. She sees you walk by, Amara, and gives you a nice little smile. Mouths thank you. And as you all exit out, you make your way across the street. Bernard moves the car around, finds a proper parking spot. Anton, you speak with the gentleman and mention that you're going to need maybe a little bit more time. And he says, "Oh yeah, no problem, man. Like I said, 5 hours. It's not due here till this evening. It's barely past 1. It's 1:15. We're good. Yeah, absolutely. Please don't kill me."
Good. Maybe not too
And
much longer.
we cut to a scene of the four of you sitting at a 1920s diner, coffee shop style. A waitress has approached, taken all of your orders. Perhaps it's just 4 coffees black. I'm not sure.
Oh no, tea.
Tea, very good. Tea, sir? We got Lipton. I don't know what they had in the 20s. I'm gonna assume it was Lipton. So that's where we're at. They got Lipton. Maybe some green tea, but they have one tea bag. That's all they've got. Were tea bags invented in the 1920s? I think they
Tea bags been
existed.
around for a while.
I don't know. I'm not a historian. Anyway, but I digress. So we see you all. See her bring the hot water, brings a single serve tea bag, sets it in front of you. It's the worst tea you've ever had, Reginald, but we won't get too deep into that. But I imagine that you've set the box. This is in my headcanon. You've set the box in the middle of the table. And we're going to open maybe after you've had a moment to calm your nerves, sip a cup of coffee. What would you guys like to talk about?
So, how do we stop these monsters he and friends unleashed years ago? How we stop with the box?
Well, I assume it's what's in the box. But again, in his mind, the ravages of age affected his psyche. But humor him.
Yes, let us just keep an open mind. Not so open that our brains fall out.
Yeah, okay.
I think Amara will like rotate the box towards her, right? The latch facing her. And we'll sort of put her hand out. She has extinguished her cigarette because, people are eating, right? And we'll sort of gesture, have a hand out towards Reginald. Take the key and take a bit of a breath and then insert the key. Wait for the explosion.
You turn the latch, the box pops open, and it looks like maybe it doesn't have springs, but it appears that whatever's inside was pushed down, kind of shoved down, so it just kind of creeps open a little bit. As you open it up, you see that there is a box within the box. The box itself was this black kind of painted wood, looked like maybe a jewelry box of some kind. But the small container inside the container looks to be extremely, extremely old. There are ancient hieroglyphics carved all over. It appears to be made of some sort of Egyptian wood, as it were. The box itself, it almost kind of looks like a mini sarcophagus. Inside the box as well, you also find what appears to be a number of letters, what appears to be a deed to a building or a farmstead of some sort, and then a journal as well.
Amara will sort of place these all out on the table in an arrangement where everybody could see and easily access all these things.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody have knowledge history or archaeology?
I was going to put points in archaeology, but I didn't.
Then you know it's Egyptian, but you have no idea when or where it's from specifically.
David's going to reach out for that pile of letters and try to find the one that is post-dated, perhaps at the earliest, if there's any indication of that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. The entries appear to have been written. So these letters look to be like pages ripped from a journal, is what you realize. But I'm going to go ahead. I'm actually going to give you the first handout of our game. The first letter is dated February 27th, 1877. And if you'd like to take a moment, you can perhaps read that. You agreed. You can read it for the class.
Does anyone want to volunteer for that so the audience can hear it as well?
Oh, it's you, David. You volunteered.
Oh, okay.
You're the one
fine.
reading it.
Yeah, you got the letter.
You've got the letter.
All right. Well, February 27th, 1877. Marianne Allen has acquired an artifact, reportedly Egyptian. It appears to be a small sarcophagus of gold. Inside is a large piece of amber, which entraps a specimen of some unknown species of arthropod. Allen is very excited, as the box corresponds to a description he found in an ordinary reference volume in the university's Orne Library. Allen says that in another book, De Vermis Mysterious, is an explanation of the powers of the box. The text says the small animal trapped in the amber is actually the host of a bound djinn, a guide to the spirit world. Allen says the tome mentions that originally there were 4 such pieces of amber contained in the box. There is no mention of what happened to the other 3. We are agreed that a date has been set to conduct a ceremony intended to summon the jinn, which Allen assures us will be friendly. We have chosen the night of Saturday, the 18th of March, the night before the new moon.
First thing you notice is he mentions that the sarcophagus is made of gold, and the one that you have here seems to be made of a old Egyptian wood.
You say jinn. This is like ghost? It says spirit, so
Not quite. In the Arabic world, it is they are more like creatures. You could think of them as spirits or demons, or they're not particularly good or bad. At least traditionally, they are called upon, protection, magical aid. They're much more complicated than that.
Well, I mean, not that I'm saying I believe any of this, but just because they thought it was this jinn doesn't mean that's actually, I mean, that obviously wasn't what it was. It was just I don't know, a lizard trapped in amber, something like that.
Waitress steps up before Amara speaks. You boys, and she looks at you again. Girl, you all doing all right?
that's good coffee.
Can I warm you up, hon?
Yeah, please.
She'll go and she gets coffee.
Another my dear lady.
You want another one of those? Your funeral. And she leaves. We'll come back, but please continue your conversation.
Well, the important thing is that we have an idea of what was going on. We have the first threads to tell what happened to Mary and see what caused his demise. If they believe that this ritual was supposed to connect them with a jinn, then perhaps this place where the ritual occurred.
There are more letters. Continue, my boy.
There's perhaps that could have been the source of this infection, sickness of some kind.
Now, that is an idea. We could go back to the hospital and ask to see his medical records. Maybe there was some kind of hallucination caused by a mold or fungus, and it incubated so that what we saw wasn't just blood. It was also a kind of sputum or mucus created by the fungus as it was growing in his body.
That is a good thought, David, but that will be difficult. We are not relatives of Mr. Merriweather, and so it will be difficult for them to release those records to us.
He sort of grimaces and says, well, bet we could convince his son.
I maybe can convince hospital staff. This is before the age of HIPAA, so
It might be easier to simply steal them than try to convince. What was his name? Henry?
Frank.
Plan B.
Let me make a phone call. I know I've Wait.
Before we
I know some people.
continue, let us continue with what was in the box first. I think would be interesting, if at least instructive. Continue reading, my boy.
Reginald, as you make this command, you have this almost, you know, when you've been on the big game hunt, you've got that like excitement prior to like fighting the creature. You've got that like you can smell the fight in the air. The hair on the back of your neck is standing up as you remember yourself sitting on a large vehicle, like up in its little, like you've got like this truck that you're driving around the desert. You've got a rifle that's far too big, and you're just picking off animals, just mercilessly from afar. No real danger, but you felt like it was danger, as it were. Yeah, fighting with the elephant gun. Correct. Thank you, Matthew. But there's something about that box. There's something about that box that just, I don't know, you do want to know. It's almost
yeah.
You feel almost obsessed. You want to know what happened next. So if you so choose to keep reading, you can, David.
So, March 19th, 1877. We began the ceremony as Alan instructed, according to that described in the De Vermis Mysterious. A fire is set in the fireplace, and a pentagram chalked on the floor, marked with appropriate symbols and illuminated by 2 black tapers placed near the center, flanking the piece of amber with its entrapped spirit. The others sit in a circle, while I, the designated watcher who guards for malevolent spirits, sits in the corner of the room. At least I get the comfort of a chair, while the others can look forward to sitting on the floor for hours. Alan throws a handful of powder in the fire, producing an evil-smelling smoke and dampening the flames, which now burn a sputtering green and brown. Those seated on the floor begin the Latin chant Alan has transcribed from his book. After nearly 2 hours, I see a trail of smoke circling up from the piece of amber. Its surface seems to be bubbling and melting. Can this be? Have we finally achieved success? I can see a form. And the entry trails off.
Does anyone know what is this De Vermis Mysterious? Does anyone know this book?
I mean, I think we have a copy of it in the Miskatonic library. There are all sorts of weird Latin books they keep there. Not for me. It's nothing medical in there, but I've heard some of the folklorists talking about them, I think.
We should perhaps earmark that. It would be interesting to take a look at this tome if there is indeed a copy.
Oh, ma'am, yes, they're really protective about their books in the Miskatonic. A lot of restricted libraries.
But the book maybe can save Rupert's life. It said it has instructions, and then as part of the ceremony, they threw some powder in fireplace and made smoke. Maybe that caused he breathed that in, caused what problem he have now, no?
You're right.
My occupation involves removing such barriers, so this can be done.
Continue reading, my boy.
Please.
Out of character, does anyone else want to take over? Because I'm fine.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Sure.
She'll take the letters, continue to read the next one. March 20th, 1877. We have finished with our plans and have sworn a pact never to speak of what happened last night. We have satisfactorily explained the death of poor Robert, and in some manner, the madness of Harold. The sheriff accepts the explanation of a carriage accident. We planned it well. Robert's neck was broken in the fall, we told him. Harold struck his head on a rock when the horse's leg broke and the carriage rolled. Would it be that it was only that? For the rest of us, we will be forever changed by what we experienced last night. I will write down the true events so they are not lost completely. The thing formed in the center of the pentagram, shapeless and nearly invisible. Its terrible voice should have given us a clue, but we were so foolish. It spoke. Then Alan cast that damned powder on the jinn. The dust of Ibn Qasi, he calls it. And that's when we could all see it clearly. Words cannot adequately describe the faceless thing with 1,000 maws. It roiled and babbled, never fully revealing itself at any one time. So terrifying was its aspect that I was frozen in place, my pen falling from my nerveless fingers. Cecil and Alan seemed as lifeless as myself, while a short, sharp cry issued from Crawford's mouth. Robert, however, rose to his feet, and before anyone could stop him, stepped forward as though to embrace our horrible guest. With its arms, or those appendages that seemed most like arms, he took hold of poor Robert and twisted his head around as though he was a doll. The lifeless corpse was then thrown back in Harold's lap, and that's when he began that damnable shrieking. The shrieking that hasn't stopped since, even after we handed him over to the sheriff's men. We still had the chance, apparently. Alan now believes that if we had kept our wits, we could have reversed the summoning and forced the creature back to wherever it came from. But Crawford panicked, and mistakenly believing that it would dispel the creature, reached forward and destroyed part of the pentagram, breaking the seal and ending its effectiveness. Released from that binding symbol, the thing, with a screech that could only have been unholy satisfaction, was ejected from the house, disappearing out the window as a roaring, screaming wind of boiling colors.
Finish this passage, you hear this kind of noise. You see that the waitress is standing right at the edge of the table. She drops her the glass, the jug of coffee.
Carafe.
The carafe, thank you, of coffee. It shatters on the ground, and she just stares at you with this kind of blank, uncomfortable expression on her face. And I'm so sorry. I'll get this cleaned up right away. Turns, pivots, walks away.
Well, it would be a hell of a bestseller.
That is occult.
Oui.
Bolshevik. How I don't know how to stop. Is what ghost is how do you fight ghost?
It's an effective story. I'll give you that. I'm sure that he'll come up with a solution, just like every ghost story, like that Arthur Machen fellow, right? That's just good people always survive ghost stories. Right? Look here. I mean, it's formulaic. The person who summoned this demon was the first one to be killed. Right? He suffered the consequences of playing with these demonic forces. It's all just so trite.
I'm sorry, my friend. I am not well read, so is I heard stories in Russia, ghost and witches casting evil eye on people, curses, but it's nothing.
Exactly the same here. There were witches everywhere. The demons coming out of the earth to mate with women, and farm girls producing half human, half spirit progeny. It's all just nonsense.
And
Entertaining nonsense, I'll give you.
As David was doing his spiel about that, Reginald extended his hand towards Amari to continue with the reading.
Yeah.
Does she hand him over, or does she continue? Or?
She'll read the next one. Yes. March 24th, 1877. Allenton intends to leave Arkham and travel to find a solution to this crisis. He said that he intends to seek out occult scholars in New Orleans. I pray he is successful, but my hopes are not high at this point. He insisted that I be custodian of the gold sarcophagus and not show it to anyone. What's even more odd is that he instructed me not to visit or even live in Boston. I can only guess as to why, as he will not tell me his reasoning, apart from his insistence that it is for my own safety. Marion still thinks that the thing could yet be destroyed, or at least dispelled, but none of us who remain have the stomach for such an undertaking. I hope he can find a way to safely banish it without another of us falling to its malevolent grip. Boston and New Orleans? We are looking for answers, and yet it is giving us more questions.
And continue, Amari. Continue.
Oui. March 26th, 1877. We now believe that the spell we cast to summon it inextricably bound the thing to the house. Alan went back this morning to retrieve some of our belongings and store our ritual accoutrement. He says that he heard it bumping around in the attic over his head, cursing him all the while. He said that it also told him that it only has to wait us out. When we who were present are all dead, it will roam the earth freely, slaughtering and feasting. Thankfully, the warding signs carved by Alan during better times, times that seem so long ago now, apparently are effective, and bar the thing entry except into the attic of the farmhouse. I might be able to sleep a few hours tonight, knowing it is bound to the attic and cannot harm anyone else. I am hopeful for the first time since we stupidly released it from the amber. If he told him the truth, then we have time to seek the answer. God be with you in your search, my friend. Well, now we know why this house is so important. There's one more here. October 14th, 1877. I just discovered that Marion Allen is dead, and has been dead for some months now. He was murdered in New Orleans this past August. I suspect that he spoke to the wrong sort of people about the things he had seen, and they killed him. The newspaper mentions the sarcophagus, so they may have been after the gold. That is 3 of us gone now. I must do something. I've already begun ancient history classes at university, so I believe I will try to research the problem at the farmhouse in that manner. Perhaps I will uncover an ancient secret of how to rid our world of that beast in my own way.
The last page of the journal has several names written into it and dates next to them. You can only assume that these dates coincide with the members that were at this ritual. Robert Mencken, March 1877. Harold Copley, August 1877. Marion Ellen, August 1877. Crawford Harris, January 1910. Cyril Jones, March 1919. And written in a very shaky, just horrible handwriting is the name Rupert Merriweather, with no date next to it. But as you watch that journal entry, you blink for a moment, Amara, as you see what appears to be just as though an invisible hand is just ever so slightly pressing. You can almost feel this kind of press on the paper as you're holding it in your hand. You can feel it kind of like push down. And you watch as a 1, then a 9, then a 2, and a 3 appear. And then to the left of it, O, C, T. And there is a forceful, and you see a tiny little hole get bored into that piece of paper, causing it to fall from your hand and flutter down to the table.
Why are you writing down date under Rupert's name?
What? I'll look at my hand. Is there a writing instrument in it?
Absolutely.
Would
I thought I would bring some closure to the situation. And I'll place the instrument down on the table.
There is one final letter that you find that is at the back of, like, underneath the sarcophagus, and it is actually addressed to each of you. And I will read this to you all in this moment. It says, "Dear friends, in the years since this nightmarish event of that night in my youth, I've seen many strange things. Only now do I begin to grasp the truth of reality and the scope of what's happening in the world. I've tried in my small way to combat the horrors and to make amends for my part in bringing one onto our plane of existence. What I have left to offer, what riches and wealth I have, I will put to good use in dealing with these abominations. It is the very least this old coward can do. Unfortunately, I could never make myself go back to that little farmhouse and put those events to right. I too gravely feared that which my friends and I loosed upon the countryside. Nothing of consequence has yet taken place, but with my death, I fear the bonds will be broken and that horror freed to come and go as it pleases. Lives not yet taken already weigh heavy on my consciousness. The method of delivering a thing out of this world is still in that accursed house. The translations made by Marion from the book De Vermis Mysterious. I was never strong enough to take on the task, but I have hope that you are. In ridding the world of this, perhaps you will save my soul from hell, for I fear that my deeds have not yet been enough to release me from this heavy burden. I do not expect your forgiveness for what I ask of you." It is signed Rupert Merriweather, and unlike the kind of shaky writing, it is signed with perfect penmanship.
we can send that son of a bitch? How? I like the old guy.
I understand your hesitance. This is quite a lot to take in. She will like extinguish her cigarette on the table, and she will pick up the things, right, the letters and so on, place them back in the box, close the box, tuck it under her arm, and then she'll get up from the table and look at the the three men at the table and say, all right, let's get started.
As you were picking up your things, I was clearly, tucking shirts, making myself fit and proper, putting my hat back on, downing the last of that god awful tea, take my cane, and bonk, stand up. Very
Somewhat
well, madam.
Miss, please.
Mm.
I know, for my part, that God rest his soul, Mary was a lifeline, a gateway into a world that I had not experienced before. Our time together in the Great War, in the sands of Northern Africa, is as essential to me and the person standing before you as water and air and love. And so I feel I owe it to him and his memory, as absurd as this whole thing sounds, to see it to some kind of end. I can only hope that you will accompany me in this endeavor.
You see Reginald standing next to Amara, looking ready, proud, confident. Anton and David both sitting still at this little booth. What do you guys do?
I look at David. Do really you think is nothing there?
can't be.
Then, my boy, come with us and prove it.
And David would reach out to the half cup of cold coffee, down it in one go, set it down on the table, stand, fixing his shirt, and stare for the first time, not awkwardly, but resolutely towards Amara, and nod at her and say, I mentioned before that Mr. Merriweather gave me a chance at life. He took somebody who didn't have a future and gave me one. That's more than my father ever did. He gave me a life worth living. And if I can make his death a little bit easier, well, I will. So
Good to hear, my boy.
That is good way to put it.
I'm with you both to the end, and I'll be there to tell you that it was all just a good story.
And that, my friend, is good breeding.
And I think that's a great
No.
end. We're going to let that lie. That's fantastic. So we watch as the four of you stand up. You pay your tab. You don't let her, you don't dine and dash, but you pay your tab. And watch as the four of you step out into the afternoon. You find out through one means or another that Rupert Merriweather did indeed pass this late afternoon, roughly 30 minutes after you had met with him. He passed. The cause of his death was the unknown malady that he suffered from, but no other information. His son bars any entrance that you all have to his body, records, etc., being the next of kin. But that, my friends, is where we're going to leave off today's session of Call of Cthulhu Memento Mori, our first part called The Edge of Darkness. But I wanted to say thank you to all of you. I actually had an absolute delightful time. I did get to hit a couple of you with some sanity damage, so I'm feeling like I'm at least on track, making the right way, driving you slowly, one point at a time, insane. But you will see these fine gentlemen back here next Sunday for part 2, or session 2, whatever we want to call it, of this, and they will begin their investigation. You've got a number of different avenues. You could look into this book. You could look into some of the deaths of these cult members, as it were. You could research the library, head straight to the farmstead if you want, but you've got a lot of different avenues. So our next session will involve them researching into what the heck is going on in this fantastical story that has no grounds in reality. I'm sure, David. I'm absolutely sure. But as I always say at the end of every session, any final thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns from the players before we wrap up today's session?
That ending thoroughly chilled my back.
It was good. It was good. You guys did great. I love the reading. Thank you guys for doing that. That was fantastic. It felt good. It was good. And yeah, that's Cthulhu. I thought you guys did great. But as I always say as well, thank you so fucking much to the players for playing, dropping my F-bomb there. Everybody gets one. Yeah, he knows about that, Prof X. And thank you so much to the viewers for viewing. You'll catch us next week, same game time, same game place, for Session 2 of Call of Cthulhu Memento Mori. I look forward to it, and I look forward to driving each and every one of these delightful people completely insane. Good night, everybody.